When Whoopi Goldberg laughed at Karoline Leavitt's faith, viewers expected fireworks. But what happened next was something else entirely. Watch how one calm, confident woman shut down the room. It all began on a seemingly ordinary weekday episode of The View, the popular daytime talk show known for its loud debates, political clashes, and headline-making moments. The guest for the day? Karoline Leavitt, a sharp, well-spoken, 20-something conservative commentator and former White House staffer under President Donald Trump. Young, articulate, and unafraid to challenge the status quo, Karoline was invited to share her thoughts on a range of issues, everything from government policy to the role of Gen Z in shaping the future of American politics. From the very beginning, you could feel the tension. Not aggressive, just thick. The kind of tension that comes from a room full of strong opinions, sharp tongues, and very different worldviews. But to her credit, Karoline came in calm, smiling, and ready. The first few minutes went relatively smooth. Joy Behar tossed a few light questions her way, asking about her experience working in the White House, what inspired her to enter politics at such a young age, and what it's like being a conservative voice in a time where mainstream media often leans left, Karoline answered confidently, blending personal anecdotes with clear, thoughtful arguments. She wasn't trying to stir the pot. She was just explaining who she was and what she believed. Then came a bit more pressure. Sunny Hostin, known for being more direct, began pressing Karoline on hot-button topics, abortion, education, and freedom of speech on college campuses. Karoline held her ground, respectfully pushing back and offering the kind of answers that made it clear she knew her stuff. But then, everything shifted. In response to a question about where her values came from, Karoline said something simple. Something that, for many Americans, wouldn't be controversial at all. "My Christian faith is the foundation of everything I believe," she said. "It guides my values, how I view policy, and how I treat others, even those who disagree with me." That's when the mood in the room changed. Whoopi Goldberg, a longtime co-host of the show and never one to bite her tongue, visibly leaned back in her chair. She raised an eyebrow, chuckled, and then she laughed, loudly. The kind of laugh that wasn't friendly or amused. It was dismissive. "Oh, here we go again," Whoopi said, waving her hand. "Another politician using religion as a shield. Give me a break." The audience let out a mix of responses. Some laughed with her, a few clapped. But others? They went quiet. It was the kind of moment where the air gets sucked out of the room. Not from shock, but from discomfort. And in the middle of that storm of noise and tension, Karoline didn't flinch. She didn't roll her eyes. She didn't raise her voice. She didn't get defensive or try to match Whoopi's tone. Instead, she smiled. It wasn't a smug smile or a sarcastic smirk. It was the smile of someone who knows exactly who they are and refuses to let anyone shake that. And then she waited. She let the laughter die down. She let the noise settle. And when the moment was quiet again, when all eyes were back on her, Karoline leaned forward and delivered a line that would quickly go viral across social media. "Whoopi, I don't use my faith as a shield. I use it as a compass. And sometimes, a compass points you in the exact direction everyone else is too afraid to go." Boom. Just like that, the studio fell silent. No one interrupted. No one laughed. Not even Whoopi had a comeback ready. The entire panel, and much of the audience, seemed caught off guard by the weight and clarity of Karoline's words, and that was the moment everything changed. In one sentence, Karoline flipped the dynamic. She took what could have been a humiliating moment, a mocking laugh on national TV, and turned it into a bold declaration of identity, belief, and courage. She didn't fight. She didn't fold. She simply stood her ground. And that strength was louder than any insult could ever be. In a culture where faith is often mocked or dismissed, especially in mainstream entertainment, Karoline Leavitt reminded everyone watching that real strength isn't about shouting the loudest. It's about staying grounded in what you believe, even when the world laughs at you. And that's a lesson that resonated with millions. Karoline Leavitt didn't raise her voice. She didn't roll her eyes. And she didn't throw insults back. Instead, she leaned forward, looked Whoopi Goldberg directly in the eye, and delivered one of the most powerful lines daytime television has heard in years. "Whoopi, I don't use my faith as a shield. I use it as a compass." And sometimes, a compass points you in the exact direction everyone else is too afraid to go. For a moment, time seemed to stop. No dramatic music, no shouting match. Just a calm, crystal-clear voice cutting through the noise. And just like that, the room went silent. Not a word, not a whisper. Not even Whoopi, known for her razor-sharp wit and instant comebacks, had a response. The look on her face said it all. She wasn't expecting that. This wasn't a mic drop moment because of volume. It was a mic drop moment because of substance, clarity over chaos. What made Karoline's statement so impactful wasn't just what she said, but how she said it. There was no anger behind her words, no bitterness, no attempt to shame or scold. Instead, her voice carried calm authority. You could feel that she meant every word. She wasn't trying to win a debate. She was simply stating a truth she lived by, and that authenticity hit harder than any rehearsed argument ever could. You see, in a world where it's easy to yell and even easier to mock, Karoline chose clarity over chaos. She didn't need to get loud to be heard. Faith, without apology, let's be real. In modern mainstream media, it's not common to see young public figures speak openly and unapologetically about their faith, especially on a show like The View, where religion often becomes the punchline rather than part of a serious discussion. But Karoline did something rare. She didn't use her faith as a political tool. She didn't brandish it as a weapon. She described it for what it was to her, a compass, a daily guide, a source of strength and purpose. And that metaphor, it was perfect, because a compass doesn't shout. It doesn't force. It doesn't judge. It simply points north, even when the path is unpopular, even when others scoff, even when the entire world seems to be going the other way. That one sentence, "I use it as a compass," resonated deeply with viewers who know what it feels like to stand alone, holding firm to values the culture calls outdated. Grace under fire. What stood out just as much as Karoline's words was the way she carried herself under pressure. Here she was, in front of a national audience, being laughed at by one of the most iconic figures in daytime television. And yet, she didn't flinch. She didn't react with offense. She didn't complain. She didn't try to make it about her. Instead, she responded with grace and unshakable poise. And let's be honest, that kind of grace is rare these days. We live in a culture where outrage gets the views and drama drives the headlines. But Karoline flipped the script. She showed that quiet strength can speak volumes. And the audience? They felt it. Whether they agreed with her or not, you could sense the respect. Some viewers leaned in, some nodded slowly. Some simply stayed quiet, perhaps reflecting on the last time they saw someone handle mockery with such dignity. The message heard. Around the internet within hours, that short exchange was clipped and posted across social media. Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, YouTube, every platform was buzzing, and it wasn't just conservative audiences who took notice. Even people who disagreed with Karoline politically found themselves admiring her composure, her confidence, her refusal to lash out. One popular tweet summed it up perfectly. You don't have to agree with Karoline Leavitt to admit, she just gave a masterclass in how to respond when the world mocks your beliefs. This wasn't just a viral moment. It became a conversation starter about faith, conviction, media bias, and the power of calm resistance. Standing strong, speaking softly, in a world where so many voices are competing to be the loudest, Karoline reminded everyone that strength doesn't have to roar. Sometimes strength looks like a calm face in the face of mockery. Sometimes it sounds like a measured voice that refuses to be shaken. Sometimes strength is found in standing still, when everything around you tries to push you back. Karoline Leavitt didn't just defend her faith. She redefined what it means to do so with courage, class, and clarity. And for that brief moment, even the loudest voice on the panel had nothing left to say. This moment on The View became about so much more than a disagreement between two women. It wasn't just a spontaneous clash between Whoopi Goldberg and Karoline Leavitt. It became a snapshot of the larger divide in America today. What unfolded on live television wasn't just entertainment. It was a cultural collision, a brief, unscripted confrontation that pulled back the curtain on the deeper tensions that define modern American society. On one side, mainstream Hollywood voices like Whoopi, seasoned, progressive, and often quick to question or even mock traditional beliefs, especially when those beliefs are wrapped in conservative or religious language. On the other, a rising generation of young Americans like Karoline, unapologetically rooted in faith, tradition, and values that have shaped this country since its founding, even if they're increasingly labeled controversial or outdated. And right there, in front of millions of viewers, these two Americas collided, not with shouting, but with conviction. The Hollywood narrative versus the Heartland, belief Whoopi Goldberg, represents a voice that many in Hollywood and urban elite circles share, a skepticism, if not cynicism, toward religious influence in public life. Over the years, celebrities and media personalities have normalized the idea that faith, particularly Christianity tied to conservative principles, is something to be questioned, dismissed, or even ridiculed. It's become common to hear religion referred to as a crutch or an excuse, or as Whoopi put it, a shield. To her and many like her, invoking faith in political or social debate often feels like deflection. They view it as an outdated narrative, a story people tell themselves to avoid modern complexities. But to people like Karoline Leavitt, faith isn't an excuse, it's the foundation. She doesn't see it as a weakness or a fallback. She sees it as a compass, something that doesn't always point to comfort or popularity, but always points to truth. And by calmly expressing that belief in the face of laughter, she drew a clear line, not just between herself and Whoopi, but between two ideologies that are shaping America's future. The courage to believe publicly. It takes courage to talk about faith in public, especially in 2025. We live in a time where saying, "I believe in God," can spark eye rolls, where standing up for traditional values is immediately labeled political, where faith, when spoken out loud, is often misunderstood as judgment or bigotry. But Karoline didn't just mention her faith, she owned it, she wore it with grace, and she defended it, not with anger but with reason. That's a powerful example for millions of people watching who also believe, but feel pressured to stay quiet. Young professionals, students, creators, and even celebrities who live by values. They feel they can't publicly express. Karoline gave them a voice. In doing so, she reminded the country that belief, real, lived-out belief, is not just alive but rising, especially among younger generations who are tired of being told that faith and intellect can't coexist. Tradition versus modernity. At its core, this moment was about more than faith. It was about what America values and who gets to define that. On one side, a culture obsessed with modernity, constantly reinventing, discarding, and redefining what's acceptable. A world that elevates fame, social currency, and personal freedom above all. On the other side, a culture that values tradition, rooted in history, built on conviction, and guided by spiritual and moral clarity. Neither side is entirely right or wrong, but the friction between them is growing. And this exchange between Karoline and Whoopi made that friction visible. It showed that we're not just debating policies or politicians, we're debating worldviews, what it means to be right, what it means to be good, what it means to lead. A conversation, not a fight. And perhaps the most remarkable part of the entire moment, it wasn't a fight. There were no personal insults, no shouting over each other, no dramatic storm-offs or cut to commercials, just two women, one representing the old guard of progressive Hollywood, the other a new wave of faith-driven leadership, exchanging views. It was raw. It was real. And because of that, it struck a chord. Millions of people saw themselves in that moment, either in Whoopi's skepticism or Karoline's conviction. And for the first time in a long time, the conversation didn't just polarize, it made people think what it really means. This wasn't about winning an argument. This was about revealing a truth that's been simmering beneath the surface.
For years, America isn't just divided by politics, it's divided by purpose. What drives us? What guides us? What do we stand for? Karoline Leavitt answered that question with grace and clarity, and even those who disagreed had to admit she
made them stop and think. In the end, maybe that's what we need more of. Not louder arguments, but deeper truths. Not more division, but more courage to speak our values, even when it's unpopular. Because sometimes, the most powerful conversations begin where the laughter ends. As soon as the episode of The View aired, the clip of Karoline Leavitt's calm but firm response to Whoopi Goldberg started making the rounds online. And then, like wildfire, it spread. Within hours, hashtags like Karoline Leavitt, Whoopi Clapback, and Faith Under Fire were trending. Across Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, and even Facebook. What began as a single exchange between two women with very different worldviews suddenly became a nationwide conversation. The internet wasn't just watching, it was reacting. Fast, and the IE responses? They were electric. Supporters rally behind. Supporters of Karoline wasted no time in praising her for what they saw as grace under pressure, strength in the face of mockery, and most of all, a bold stand for faith in a place that rarely welcomes it. One tweet that went viral said, "This girl just taught a masterclass on how to disagree with grace." Whoopi didn't know what hit her. Another user posted, "Whether you're religious or not, Karoline Leavitt just showed what it means to stay calm, confident, and composed under fire. That's leadership." Comment sections were flooded with messages like, "Finally, someone who doesn't shout, doesn't crumble, and speaks from the heart." That smile, that poise. She didn't attack, she just spoke truth. America needs more Karolines and fewer keyboard warriors. Many people said they didn't even know who Karoline Leavitt was before that moment. But now, they were paying attention. Even her critics had to admit something. What made this moment stand out even more was that even Karoline's critics, people who disagreed with her politics, her platform, or her past affiliations, were willing to give credit where it was due. One viral comment summed it up like this: "Look, I don't agree with a lot of what she believes, but you can't fake that kind of composure. She handled that better than most seasoned politicians would have." Others chimed in with similar thoughts. "Not a fan of her politics, but she earned some respect today." That wasn't a meltdown. That was a mic drop without the mic. You don't have to like her message to respect her delivery. In an online culture that's often black and white, this moment introduced something rare: nuance. People from both sides were engaging, not just reacting, viral across platforms. The clip wasn't just trending, it was everywhere. TikTok users created duet reactions, lip syncs, and thoughtful commentary videos that racked up millions of views in just a few days. Some stitched the moment with their own experiences of being mocked for their faith or beliefs in classrooms, on campuses, or at work. YouTube shorts and reaction videos quickly followed. Creators across political spectrums analyzed the interaction, broke down Karoline's body language, and discussed the larger cultural implications. Instagram Reels featured subtitles over dramatic music, with captions like, "When the world laughs at your faith, stand firm." Even Facebook groups, especially those centered around young conservatives, Christians, and Gen Z voters, shared the video with heartfelt captions about identity, strength, and staying true to yourself. A conversation ignited. But this wasn't just about one viral moment. The clip sparked something bigger, a national conversation about the place of faith in public life, the tone of political discourse, and the way we handle disagreement. On podcasts, live streams, and in newsrooms, commentators began asking, is it okay to laugh at someone's deeply held beliefs? Has our society lost respect for religious conviction? Can we disagree passionately while still remaining civil? For a moment, people weren't just arguing, they were reflecting. And that's the real power of what happened. Karoline didn't just make a point, she made people think. When character goes viral, let's be honest, viral moments online are often built on drama, outrage, and clapbacks. But this was different. Karoline Leavitt went viral not for shouting, not for insulting, and not for tearing anyone down. She went viral for standing tall, smiling calmly, and responding with substance and self-control. It reminded people, on both sides of the aisle, what strength really looks like, and that's why this moment didn't just blow up, it lingered. It started trending for the shock value, but it stayed in the spotlight because it tapped into something real. More than a trend, a turning point. In a time when it feels like everything is about sides, sound bites, and cancel culture, this moment showed that integrity still resonates, that grace still matters, that you can hold your ground without burning bridges. Karoline Leavitt may have walked onto The View as just another guest, but she walked off the screen as a symbol of something bigger. She didn't just go viral, she went visible, to a generation looking for courage, not chaos. And in today's world, that's more powerful than any hashtag. So why does this single moment on a daytime talk show matter? Why are people still talking about Karoline Leavitt and that now famous exchange with Whoopi Goldberg? It's not just about politics. It's not just about religion. And it's certainly not just about going viral. This moment matters because it showed the world that being young, being faithful, and being fearlessly bold do not have to be three separate things. Too often in today's culture, we're told otherwise. We hear it in college classrooms, see it in social media trends, and feel it in conversations with peers, that if you're young, you're supposed to conform, that if you're religious, keep it quiet, that if you're principled, be ready to get laughed at. But Karoline shattered that narrative in less than a minute by doing something revolutionary. She stayed calm, stood tall, and spoke truthfully. A different kind of strength, Karoline. Didn't storm onto The View to pick a fight. She didn't hurl insults. She didn't play victim when challenged. She came to share her story. She came to explain what guides her, what grounds her, and what gives her the courage to speak on the issues that matter to her generation. And when she was laughed at, mocked, for her faith, and subtly dismissed, she didn't flinch. She leaned in and delivered a line that resonated across the country. I don't use my faith as a shield, I use it as a compass. With that one sentence, she reclaimed the narrative. She reminded viewers that faith doesn't have to be loud to be strong. That conviction doesn't have to come with confrontation. That dignity is a form of strength, and millions of people watching, from college dorms to office cubicles, from churches to boardrooms, felt that. A compass in a noisy world we live. In a world filled with noise, political shouting matches, social media arguments, endless opinion pieces. Everyone's yelling to be heard. But often, the loudest voices aren't the strongest. Karoline's moment reminded us of something important. The strongest voices are often the calmest ones in the room. In a time when it's trendy to be edgy, controversial, or performative, she chose to be centered. Her faith wasn't a weapon, it was a guide. And that's what made her response so powerful. It wasn't about silencing the other side. It was about standing her ground without losing her grace. That's rare. And that's exactly why this moment matters. A new kind of leader. What Karoline did wasn't just impressive. It was a glimpse of something bigger. It was a preview of what leadership could look like in the next generation. Too many young people have been told they have to choose, be bold, or be polite, be spiritual, or be relevant, be young, or be wise. But Karoline broke all those false choices in one sitting. She showed that it's not only possible to bring your faith, your intellect, and your youthful courage to the table. It might be the most powerful combination of all. Her poise didn't come from trying to win the room. It came from knowing who she is and what she stands for, and refusing to change that just because someone laughed. And that's the kind of leadership America desperately needs, for anyone who's ever been mocked. This moment was for more than just Karoline. It was for every student who's been ridiculed for sharing a belief in class, for every employee who's been told to tone it down when it comes to values, for every young person of faith who's been made to feel like they don't belong in modern culture. It was a message to them, loud and clear. You are not alone. And you don't have to shout to be heard. Karoline's calm strength became a mirror. It showed countless others that they too can speak up with conviction and compassion and make a real impact. The lasting takeaway, when all is said and done, what will people remember about this moment? Not the studio lighting, not the applause or laughter, not even Whoopi's reaction. They'll remember one young woman who stood in the center of a national spotlight and said, "I don't use my faith as a shield. I use it as a compass." They'll remember how she didn't back down, didn't lash out, and didn't compromise. They'll remember how, in a world full of noise, she became a voice of clarity. Because in the end, this wasn't just about one woman on TV, it was about all of us. It was a reminder that when you know who you are, you don't have to fear what others think. That the most powerful stand you can take is the one rooted in grace, truth, and unshakable conviction. If this moment inspired you, if it reminded you to stand strong in your faith, your values, or your voice, then don't forget to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so you never miss another story like this. Drop a comment below and let us know. Do you think Karoline handled it right? What would you have said? Thanks for watching, and remember, be bold, be kind, and never be afraid to speak truth, even when it's unpopular. See you in the next video.